second conversation I want us to have is around the valuation of business. And when I say that, I mean like a valuation of a business worth from a stock market perspective, but also a valuation from, you know, how do we measure internally, and do we have that value mindset in team finance? And now I know not everyone is in finance still because you're getting to bigger roles, but you know, think back to team finance when you were there or in your business. You know, do they have that values mindset? Are they thinking about return? You know, and again, we can talk about the drivers of value around, you know, the data and the wisdom and the insights. But I think, Victoria, you know, you mentioned a big point there about dual speeds, and I think there's dual speed across language and valuation. But I'd be interested to see where you are about the measure of value and how to think about that.
Okay, so it just reminds me of an exercise we asked to do. So the board had requested, it's about a year and a half ago, where we're looking to expand and grow into sub-Saharan Africa. So we were looking at, okay, if we were to acquire, because something brings about valuation, you know, it doesn't just happen. An activity or something will preempt it. So the board had said, look, let's even see what our value is out there. If we were to sell this part of the business, you know, what's the value? And so obviously entrusted to finance, we had to go about working out and computing the value of the business, of the various segments and the business as a whole, because we wanted to know if we sold this part of the business, you know, what is our book looking like? And if we were to sell the entire thing, what is it looking like? So I remember calling a couple of my friends using my network in the Big Four. I called someone at EY, and I think I called someone at PwC as well, and said, look, do you have data? I really need some data, because the board isn't wanting an accounting computation. They want market data. They need to know, you know, what's obtainable out there. What other media businesses have been sold similar to ours, and how much was it sold for in terms of the value? What is the earning multiple? So I had to check. Fortunately for us in Nigeria, there wasn't really that data wasn't obtainable. So I had to use South Africa, because we could find data in South Africa for media businesses similar to us that was sold. Some other parts of Africa also had. So I had to use the earning multiples there to determine what ours, you know, would look like. And then, you know, after our computation, we're like, look, based on a similar radio, a TV station in these places around the world, we believe we'll be able to obtain this sort of multiple, you know, if we, so yeah, it was a really good exercise, but I think we've moved on from the, you know, sometimes we're fixated on discounted cash flows and the traditional accounting methods of computing a business or the worth of a business. It's moved on now, and you know, increasingly CEOs, board members want more. They want to know what truly investors, you know, what your company is worth in the eyes of investors.
Mm. Yeah, I think, I don't know if anyone else caught it, but ACCA was doing a piece on intangible assets, and there was a guy there that was asked the question, like, is EBITDA dead? And if it's not dead, is it dying? Like, you know, we know, I mean, there's so many businesses out there that don't make a profit still, or only just making a profit, and they're worth, you know, billions of dollars. Like, it just blows an accountant's mind to go, like, how does that
Absolutely.
work?
Absolutely.
Rashida, you were you wanted to add something there.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think it's a really more exciting for me right now is that when you just touched on the digital, you know, sort of space, there's so much changes going on. We're typically used as accountants to the lag measures, right? Talking about the earnings, what had happened historically, and then projecting that going forward. But in the new normal and in, you know, a lot of the evolving tech companies, for example, they're talking about futuristic possibilities. I mean, what sort of measures and what data would you be able to use? In Nigeria, we had a company, InterSwitch, for example, that was valued, you know, a lot more than the banks who were actually earning profits compared to this company who was, earning significantly lower than them. But in terms of the value, the customers that they have, so there we have the lead measures. New KPIs are evolving in terms of customer life cycle possibilities, and how getting them into your ecosystem and engaging and keeping them could mean even much more than what we are used to typically. So there's actually a lot more for us, both in the service industry and perhaps even in the manufacturing industry, where you sort of have to pivot your thinking around earnings. So truly, EBITDA might not be the king of all anymore, because we just can't rely on historic situations to move forward. So I thought it would be interesting to add this, but definitely a very debatable area.
And I think what you're talking about there, Rashidat, is, I know that you're Chief Client Officer at AXA, so you've moved on from finance, and you can see it in your language. But I think that's the future role of finance, is actually being that future possibilities calculator, because we need to think a bigger picture.
Indeed. But I think ACCA is already taking us on that journey. We're already changing the narrative and how we're training people and what we're expecting from them. But, we talked a little bit earlier around the different technicalities in different areas across industries. Even in the same company, moving divisions, being a business partner as a finance person from one area to the other requires new understanding.
Yeah,
it's just reality.
Yeah, and I think also, again, there's so many different demographics to that learning. So yes, ACCA bringing people on the journey, but that's assuming that people are engaging, that members are engaging with ACCA. But then what about the non-ACCAs out there, or the people that aren't engaging? How do we bring them on that journey? And I've been really vocal in my challenge. I think the people that are going to face the biggest challenges are those that are sort of 40 to 55 in age, and I count myself in that, because we didn't grow up with internet. A couple of people have already said around, having a Sony Walkman was about as fancy as it got, but we didn't have that. So our mindset isn't based on HD learning; it's based on good old pen and paper.
Yeah, if I could add in there, Paula.
Yeah.
What I find is that I have to intentionally engage my nieces to actually tell me what's going on for my own goodness, because I'm aware that their language is different from ours.
And I think that talks again to the strength of a diverse team. And I think diversity is so much more than color and gender. It's actually age and that demographic. Like a good diverse team would have one of all of the generations in it, so that we all brought something to the table.
Yeah, I think just to quickly add in there, Paula, is the fact that we can use our knowledge of strategy to bring value to our organizations. I remember 5-6 years ago, Coleco was very vocal about technology being the future and all of that. And that's what we see today. So if you look at a company like TikTok, barely existed a year ago, now being valued at arguably over, $50 billion US. Zoom, being valued at the time, Zoom was more valued in terms of corporate value ahead of 7 other global airline companies.
Yeah.
Take out of this and bring to our organization. For me, starting up a new company, I'm not going to go the same route people did, the big fours did. We're going digital, we're going apps, how can we leverage what we're doing? How can we go? Because when everybody thinks about value now, they think about how much, corporate followership have you generated? If somebody is if you have a chat box, how many people go there? Who uses that platform? That's what drives value right now. And it's good Rashida talked about that. I used to work for a company, one of my clients in Nigeria back then was Waka Now, similar to Opodo and all of this other,
logistics,
travel. And what they were telling me 7 years ago is that we know what our profit would be. We can tell you based on this search engines optimization, vehicle. And they were so, they trusted those assumptions coming out of that. But as accountants, we'll say, oh no, you can't capitalize all of those intangibles. We're still speaking the language of 30 years ago. Is EBITDA dead? It is dead. Of course, it is dead. More than 10 years ago or so, when WhatsApp was sold for $19 billion with no revenues. When Facebook bought WhatsApp, no revenues, nothing. It just had 300 million. That has grown now to over 1 billion users. That was what Facebook was buying, and they were willing to pay 19 billion. A lot of people said it was too expensive, but we know better now. If TikTok is worth $50 billion, then they got it on the cheap, of course. So I think this is what we can bring to our organizations. Whatever we're doing, be it teaching, consulting, how can we digitize that? How can we take that to the next level? How can we start looking at ways in which you can, collate users and communities around that? That will be critical.
Yeah.